Joining us now, Amy Ball. She is the founder of Friends of Kurdistan, and I not only welcome you back into that chair, but welcome you home.
Thank you so much.
Your fourth trip that you just came back from. I want to start by, because you were in that chair almost exactly a year ago, and for those who didn't see that interview, I want you to remind us what drew you to this place that, frankly, not that many Canadians think about. Kurdistan. How come?
A friend of mine from Queen's Park, a fellow colleague of mine, he had a great experience, Charles MacDonald, and he said, I want you to go. And I said, ha ha, sure. He came back with really great stories saying we can do so much over there. Amy, just come with me. So we planned to go, a bunch of us, each with our own specialties, and I ended up getting on that plane by myself due to some passport issues.
Which your husband and 2 children were thrilled about.
Thrilled.
You got little kids, right?
Yes, I have 2, 6 and 11.
And you went anyway?
Went anyway.
By yourself?
Charles told me it was safe.
And was it?
Yes.
Well, you're back, so yeah. I guess it's safe
I'm
enough.
back for the 4th time, yeah.
Right.
And most of the time I travel by myself, so.
On your most recent trip, what projects were you working on?
Well, our main project is microcredit programs for women, and I was focusing on developing networks with the NGOs who are already on the ground there. My approach is not to reinvent things, it's to work with what's already there, and the local NGOs already know who needs help, where it should go, and who's in greatest need, so why try to reinvent the wheel? So I wanted to connect with those individuals and organizations throughout Kurdistan and see where we can be the most help.
And are you?
Well, it's early to tell, but they're grateful for our support. We also work on capacity building, which is train the trainers, bringing over CDs and training materials that they can use to do staff upgrading, connecting them with NGOs in Canada, supporting their intellectual resources.
Here's what the New York Times recently said about the Kurdish region of Iraq. The Kurdish region continues to solidify its position as a haven of security and prosperity compared with the rest of Iraq. Oil companies and foreign investors are pouring into the region, hoping to use it as a launch pad for expansion into the rest of Iraq when the right moment comes. Last year, the region's booming capital, Erbil, became home to the first official General Motors dealership in all of Iraq since the fall of Saddam Hussein's government. This month, the Lebanese pop sensation Alyssa will make her Iraq debut at a concert in Erbil. You know, that's a very glowing account of what's happening over there. And I wonder if from your first trip to your most recent trip, what changes you have seen in the country as well, not in the country, in the region, I should say.
Well, every trip I see change. They're a growing economy in a global recession. There are construction cranes everywhere. Every trip I go, there's new businesses started, there's new infrastructure put in. They're going at a tremendous pace. I mean, this trip, there was a lot of power outages because people are pushing onto the grid at tremendous amounts that exceed their capacity. It's a remarkably expanding place, and because of their safety, and they are very safe, and people from southern Iraq flee to Kurdistan for the safety and protection of that area, you have the ability for trade. I met with the trade minister. He's got an open book policy. He's extremely open to foreign investment and is working really hard to make sure that they continue on that path. But my problem with that is that we all know that just because money pours in doesn't mean that it filters down to all of the people who need it. Sure. There's still illiteracy rates that are high in the rural villages.
Hold off on that for a second, because you said it's safe, and I do want to follow up on that, because I think I read recently that, I mean, they're in the midst of an election campaign right now. March the 7th is going to be an election, and a few people were killed the other day, right, during the campaign?
Yes.
So, I mean, it's not safe like Canadian safe. It's safe, relatively speaking, to the region?
Well, people get killed in Toronto too, but you know,
not during election campaigns.
Some should.
You want to fill in the blanks there? No, we'll move on.
No, we'll move on. Yeah. But yes, there is a difference, though. This is the first Iraqi election where you have photos of candidates on election material because it's safe for them to do that. Before, you would only have a list, and you wouldn't know what the image was of the person because it would put their life in risk. Now they've upgraded security to the point where people can campaign in a more Western style. And yes, there's a little more ramped up energy, there's a little more danger involved during a campaign because tensions are higher. They're very, very political. Get out the vote has got to be pretty easy over there because you all know who your people are. Right. You tend to not see people cross lines. You just got to drive your people to the poll. But there was increased security. The writ was dropped, or whatever their term is, the Friday before I left. And there was massive increase of security. There were barricades, there were more police on the streets. I mean, I did see an increase in security. This is noticeable
in everyday
Noticeable, noticeable.
Okay. You were also over there just after a very significant historical event took place, and I want to ask you about that. I'm not sure our viewers will recognize the name Ali Hassan al-Majid, but they will certainly know him by his nickname, Chemical Ali, who was responsible, of course, for gassing the Kurds. I guess it's about 20 years ago now, and he was hanged just before your arrival there. Did you talk to people about this, and if so, what did they say?
One of the centers of, not one of the only places hit by Chemical Ali, but one of the biggest areas of focal point for the Kurds is Halabja, where 5,000 died in one shot because of Chemical Ali. I personally have been to Balisan, where one of the first places where civilians were hit by one of Chemical Ali's bombs. And I talked to women I talked to a widow who lost her whole family at that event. There were livestock running around blind, whole families keeled over dead at dinner. And how they feel about it is grateful. Grateful that they can move forward. And while you don't see the Kurds often harbor retaliatory feelings about what went on during Saddam's time, they just kind of move forward. There was a gratitude that this part has been put to bed. Why did it take so long for someone so obviously involved in the death of so many people? Why did he last so long? Why waste time? Let's just get it over with. So they were jubilant. There were celebrations in Halabja, Kalashnikovs firing in the street. There was a massive party.
Let me move on and ask you, I'm going to read something now from the National Review Online, and this is somewhat in contradistinction to what I just read about the New York Times, and I'll get you to comment on it. Iraqi Kurdistan may be the least violent area in Iraq, but it is fast becoming the least tolerant place for civil society, the most corrupt region in Iraq, and the most dangerous place in Iraq to invest or be journalists. Indeed, Iraqi Kurdistan is becoming Syria. Corruption in Iraqi Kurdistan has grown to ensnare some prominent former U.S. officials. Many of those who are now singing the Kurds' praise may find themselves embarrassed by their willingness to look the other direction right now. How does that description jive with your experience there?
I think that description is apropos throughout the Middle East. I think that description is a snapshot of a small segment. I don't think that represents Iraqi Kurdistan at all. I think that that's one person who either had a bad experience or knows of one thing. I mean, I could write a book on how foreign aid is misdirected and how the U.S. aid has been somewhat misdirected in that area and how it could have done better.
But to get your projects through, do you have to do backsheesh and all this kind of thing?
No, I don't travel with a briefcase of cash. And actually, you know, the government has facilitated virtually every step of my trip. This trip, the Ministry of Health gave me a car and driver. The last trip...
Their Ministry of Health?
Yes, their Ministry of Health. The last trip where I brought 7 integrated medical health professionals in October, they provided 3 Land Rovers security. They have worked with us. They want to develop their people. They want to see progress. And there was no cash exchange. All they wanted was to see that we left behind more than we, you know.
But do you get a sense that the public service over there or the bureaucracy over there is just like dealing with the bureaucracy over here?
No, there's no comparison.
Whose is worse?
Theirs.
Okay,
in that there really isn't one. In that organizationally they are challenged, and that's their downfall. But that's also the downfall of how transitional governments are formed. That's the downfall of, let's just say, the U.S. coming in and propping them up for a while and then withdrawing without having trained the people to step into those positions. So now you have the bureaucracy that left during the regime aren't back yet. So you have, you know, who filling those positions. There's no consistency to projects. On the other hand, it's easy to get a project through if you know who you're dealing with and you know what desk it sits on. You just sit in that desk until your project moves to the next phase. I mean, it's possible to get things done there. In business, I'm looking forward to opening business in the future there. I'm looking forward to bringing a trade mission from Iraq to Canada. I'm looking forward to building Rotary relationships there and Chamber of Commerce relationships there. I think there's tremendous potential.
You are, I think it's fair to say, you are doing good works in this part of the world. And I want to know what kind of support you're getting from the Government of Canada to do what you're doing.
I've had no support from the Government of Canada.
Financial and or otherwise?
And or otherwise. And I mean, it's challenging in that we don't have a foreign policy on Iraq, so you can't have a foreign policy on a province within Iraq until you have one on Iraq. That's not to say they're not interested. However, my experience with CETA has been disappointing, to say the least. I had a phenomenally challenging conversation with a young recent graduate from the CETA department who pretty much said, this isn't our priority. And I said, well, you know, eventually this needs to be your priority, because either you invest now in their democratic institutions, in their education, in their literacy, or you're going to be back there with boots on the ground in 20 years, maybe even 10.
This was a phone call you had with a CETA person. You were trying to explain what you were doing over there, and you wanted some support, and what you got back.
Could we run a program? Could we jointly get involved in administering some, I'm not talking about huge dollars, I'm talking about some direct programming for capacity building through CETA.
Why aren't they interested?
It's not a priority country for them.
Iraq is not a priority country?
Apparently not. But this is not just true for CETA. This is true for a lot of the EU, for American programs. They're shifting out, they're shifting to Afghanistan, but the work isn't done yet. You cannot just leave these people hanging right now. This is a crucial time. This is the time when they can go either way. One big upset, they're going to fall back into chaos.
What difference are you still trying to make in that region?
My focus is really women and children. I've been asked to take on men's vocational training, and I said, oh, they're good. They'll figure it out. But
women and kids is where
women
it's at
and
for
children,
you.
Women's health care. I have a child right now, Noor, who we're trying to get a plastic surgeon into Kurdistan to correct her facial deformity. And there's a bunch of other children as well who need that plastic surgeon to work on them, because that is not available in Kurdistan. Their doctors are technically brilliant and the operating theaters exist, but the practical knowledge does not to do that procedure, those highly technical procedures. So ideally, we would again train the trainer. Ideally, our plastic surgeon would show this procedure. And this has been done by German surgeons who've come in and done bladder repair surgeries. There's been a number of foreign participation in their healthcare system.
You've already said the Government of Canada hasn't shown much interest in this so far, or any of the agencies affiliated with it. What about the private sector over here? What about what I'm sure is a fairly small Kurdish community over here? Any interest in their helping you out?
The Kurdish community has been involved. There's a really large Kurdish community in Hamilton. There's one in Ottawa, and there is one in Toronto here. We have been in touch, we have been involved, but financially they're in a different situation. They escaped during a really traumatic time. They're not all well off, and they'll do what they can. But mostly my connections with them have been supporting their families back home, not really any other capacity. But my mother, Judy Ball, she's been working with her community in Fawn Hill, and through them and their support, we've raised funds, we've raised the sewing machines that have gone over. We have a great sewing machine repair guy who takes in the machines, fixes them up, Mike, packages them up for us, and we ship them over.
Do you ever worry that this is a country that seems very focused at the moment on Haiti, for the last 10 years on Afghanistan, and we just may not have much of an attention span for anything else? Is that a concern?
Yes. I mean, we're a bit mob-driven in the, you know, either we just put a Band-Aid on the latest crisis, but Canadians are I always thought we were a little more in depth than that. I mean, I believed in the Lester B. Pearson approach to foreign policy, and it is preventative and it is more thoughtful. And
okay, you believed in that, and now you know the reality of the last year.
Now I've seen it.
So what's the real case?
Well, now I've got to lobby. I just don't have time to lobby. But now I've got to meet and lobby and hopefully make a difference there. But I've been too focused in Iraq to make a lobbying trip here.
You've done 4 trips. Plans to go back?
Yes. May, end of May.
End of May, you're going back again.
End of May and then October.
Well done, Amy.
Thanks
for visiting us here at TVO tonight. Amy Ball from Friends of Kurdistan.
Thank you.